2020. This is episode 100 of Glass to the Wall, and I'm here joined today by the lovely Sandy Kirchner-Wilson.
Hey.
The absolutely wonderful Luke Hemming.
Hello.
And the ever-stunning Mike McCann. And today we have got loads and loads of different awards to talk to you about, and we've got loads of videos to show you, and we're going to be sitting here discussing the winners of these categories and also who we perhaps personally voted for as well. We've got quite a few awards to get on with, so I tell you what, why not dive in to the first award of the day? Best Multiplayer. And the nominees are 51 Worldwide Games, Fall Guys, Animal Crossing New Horizons, and the winner is Animal Crossing New Horizons. So guys, Animal Crossing New Horizons has just won Best Multiplayer of the Year. Now, this is a game that I haven't really particularly played, but Sandy, Luke, Mike, jump in. Let me know what you think about Animal Crossing's multiplayer.
Played a load of Animal Crossing this year. I mean, probably put the most hours into it above any other game this year. Probably the other guys, same.
And Sandy, what about yourself? You've been playing a lot of Animal Crossing in multiplayer?
It's been probably my biggest time eater. Even now, the last couple of days I've played it with my brother a couple of times and just had a total blast. It's definitely my favourite multiplayer game of the year.
And Luke, have you been playing Animal Crossing multiplayer? What do you think is the best element of that?
Well, I think it is the escapism, isn't it? This year has been the perfect time for Animal Crossing to be released. Especially where we are, you know, we've been in a very strict house arrest basically for a long time. So having that little escape every day, just a couple of hours of routine, picking some fruit, getting some money, buying some new clothes. It's been easily the best multiplayer game and best release, I think.
Yeah, and do any of you think that it could be improved upon? Do you think there's going to be anything coming in 2021 where we can sort of change anything up or anything like that? Mike, do you have any sort of improvements, or Sandy?
Sandy looks like he's got something to say there.
Yeah, Sandy's tentatively holding his fingers there. Have you got something?
Got my finger guns ready. The one thing that is missing, that I'm really missing from older Animal Crossings, is villagers coming round to your house. People just coming round like, oh, okay, I come round to yours and see your place, and then they like wander around for a little bit, make comments on your furniture, and then they go home again. I haven't had that happen in this game.
Is that Nintendo social distancing?
There's definitely a few cutbacks in this version of the game. I mean, I think there's like less items than previous Animal Crossings, and I think like animals coming to your house. Also, like getting them to say like nicknames and things like that is harder to do in this one than it ever was before, and that's always like an element which I've always quite enjoyed about it, which has sort of been pared back a little bit, I guess, for sensible reasons, you know what I mean? But I always find that really fun.
You're the reason.
Do you think they'll continue with their sort of seasonal updates and things like that as well as we go past the sort of release date? So obviously it released last spring. Do you think we're still going to get summer, winter, autumn updates, like different themes and stuff going in there?
Yeah, I think so. We've got the Blossom Festival to look.
That'll probably be massive for Japan as well, right? So that would be a big one. Okay, well, let's move on from Animal Crossing. And let's talk to you today about our next Cubed3 award. Best Storytelling. Final Fantasy VII Remake.
The Last of Us Part 2. Cyberpunk 2077.
And the winner for the best storytelling goes to Final Fantasy VII Remake. Congratulations to the guys at Square Enix for the best storytelling there is. Now, this is a game that has obviously been out before. It's a game that came out, what, 1997? Am I correct in saying that? Or was it even later? 97. So it's a story that we've already heard before, we've already seen before, but Final Fantasy VII Remake changes things up slightly. And without any spoilers or anything like that, Luke, you're probably the resident big Final Fantasy VII fan here. You're going to have to try and be as spoiler-free as possible, but what have they done to make this the best storytelling there is?
Like you said, the first time round, I hold Final Fantasy VII as one of the great games, if not the greatest game ever made, I think. This one that got me into gaming, and the story was always such a major part of that. But I don't think it's a spoiler to say that 7 Remake plans the whole first part of the game. But they've brought in so many more story beats into it to make it probably just as big as the whole of Final Fantasy VII was. You get to know the characters more. It's a more intimate experience. Stuff you've always wondered about those characters, they've really taken the time to flesh it out, and I think that is what makes it the best storytelling. There's so much to find out about them. Side quests, there's so many of them that give you that little insight into their lives, into the members of Avalanche, like what they do, what their reasons for being there are, on characters that would just be people you'd see in the first couple of hours of the game. You now feel that they're fully fleshed out. I think that's what's done it.
Yeah, it's a lot of people have obviously talked about it, but actually no one here on this panel voted for Final Fantasy VII Remake, believe it or not. Mike, Luke, you both voted for Cyberpunk 2077. Sorry to about you. In terms of the storyline comparison between Cyberpunk and Final Fantasy VII, because Luke, obviously, you've just said fantastic things there about Final Fantasy VII. But Mike, in your thought process, why do you think Cyberpunk?
It's a difficult one with Cyberpunk because obviously it's under fire for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of criticisms to make about the launch of Cyberpunk. But I think one thing that people are agreeing on is the underlying story and writing in the game is actually pretty good. And it's kind of almost getting clouded and obfuscated by the launch woes of technical issues and hitches and save file corruptions and whatnot. But when you're actually playing the game and when it works, and when you're talking to characters, that really is the meat of the game and really, really enjoyable. And I'm still working my way through it now at the moment.
And in terms of Final Fantasy VII, Mike, deserved winner in your eyes?
Definitely. I haven't played the remake, but obviously I've played the original, and it's a classic for a reason. There's nothing else quite like Final Fantasy. It's got elements of Cyberpunk, elements of steampunk, I guess. I don't know. It's a very unique world. There's nothing else like it.
And Sandy, again, someone who didn't vote for Final Fantasy VII. And just to let everybody know, we've got a panel of about 10 or 11 different people here at Cubed3 doing the voting process here, including us 4 here. But Sandy, you voted for Persona 5 Royale. In terms of the story comparisons, do you think Final Fantasy VII was a worthy winner? And why do you think Persona 5 deserved your nomination?
I think Final Fantasy VII Remake deserves it for so many reasons. Like, my time with that game is something that I haven't forgotten yet, and that's saying a lot for something that's a remake of the first 4 hours of a PS1 game from the 90s. I think what they did with the characters and world was something that it was worth waiting. How many years since they first announced they were thinking of remaking it? But the reason I voted for Persona Royal was it took what was essentially an almost perfect story. Like Persona 5 is, I don't even know how to describe it. Probably one of the most upbeat and satisfying JRPGs I've played in years. And it took it and just gave it that little extra bit of spice, that little extra uptick that took it to that perfect 10 out of 10 score area. Obviously, I would have liked that to win, but Final Fantasy VII Remake, I think, did so much with 7 that, I'm ready for part 2. I want to see where it goes next.
Yeah. When does part 2 come out, Luke?
They have got a production, but tentatively next year.
2022.
I'm not optimistic for that, but seeing for what we got when we did finally get remake, I could wait.
Fair
maybe
enough.
2027, maybe.
I'm actually waiting for like a definitive collector's edition where it just encompasses all of the chapters. It'll be one huge game, and then just play it that way, I think. Also, it's my excuse because I just don't have time to play at the moment. But no, I have played the demo of it. I think it looks fantastic. But yeah, I do want to dive back in. It's been a long time since I played the original, so it would be very interesting to see that. Okay, well then, as we finish that topic, and congratulations to Square Enix for that, we're going to move on to our next category.
Best audio. And the nominees are Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Hatsune Miku, Project Diva, Megamix, Final Fantasy VII Remake.
And the winner is, for the best audio design, Final Fantasy VII Remake. So, here we go again, guys. And, it is very difficult to obviously keep talking about the same game over and over again. But in terms of audio design, Luke, again, I'm going to come to you first because I know you're big on Final Fantasy VII. How does it differ from the original? And in terms of sort of the grandeur of it, I think, is it orchestrated?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there with the grandeur of it. It's, again, like, to sound like a broken record, one of the best games ever made. Also, I think one of the greatest soundtracks. Like, those themes will stay in your head for the rest of your life. But what you're hearing on the PS4 in Remake is what you hear in your head, I think, when you're playing it. Fully orchestrated. Does remix some of the tracks, but I don't think it's ever to the detriment of it. They've really taken the time to keep that essence of what made the original tracks great, but really up the ante, like you said, on a grand scale, make everything that much more epic.
Yeah, and Sandy, what about you? I see you nodding along to a lot of what Luke has just said there. Is there anything that you can add in terms of the soundtrack?
Maybe not so much in terms of soundtrack, because as Luke said, it is essentially the music that you hear when you remember Final Fantasy VII, and maybe even better than what you remember. But I also want to kind of throw out some kudos to all the voice acting as well. For it's not maybe the most nuanced voice acting, but it really captured each character. It took those lines that we saw written out in plain text and gave them probably, I don't know, 74 times the amount of character they had before, and that was quite hard considering how much character was in that writing. And they really kind of, I don't know, it really added something new and extra to that Final Fantasy VII that we know and remember, having those voices going along with the story this time.
Yeah. Are you guys playing it with English voice acting or Japanese voice acting?
I played it with English.
Yeah, I've got English on as well, just because Barrett should sound like Mr. B. Yes.
And Mike, what about you in terms of the audio for Final Fantasy VII? Is that something that you've appreciate? Because I know you didn't vote.
I didn't vote for it, but that's only because I didn't play it. So I'm sure the soundtrack is top notch. Like you said, how many years in development? 15? What was it? Something crazy like that.
Well, I think about C was 2.
Yeah.
So I knew you knew about Final Fantasy a lot earlier, so it must be it.
Gives a little bit of time, doesn't it, to revise and give it a bit of polish. So yeah, you'd expect it to be there, wouldn't you?
Interestingly, I voted, just in case anyone's wondering, I voted for Dirt 5. I went with the car audio games this year. F1 2020 was also quite close. So Codemasters obviously doing really well there. But the thing I loved about Dirt 5 was because they have a different range of vehicles, the audio that was sort of being able to be played in that, as well as the music as well. I thought Dirt 5 was fantastic. In fact, I think a lot of the racing games this year were. But again, because I haven't played Final Fantasy VII, it's not something I could recognize from playing it. But definitely from afar, I think a lot of people would appreciate that. Luke, I think because you're probably more up there, I'm actually going to ask this to Sandy. But when One Winged Angel came on in that Smash Brothers unveiling for Sephiroth, was that taken from Final Fantasy VII Remake, or is that something that you recognized because of playing Final Fantasy VII Remake? Any of you? Luke?
Oh, yeah.
No,
I thought you were asking Sandy.
I was, yeah. You're both kind of looking at me blankly.
Yeah, I think it was taken from the Advent Children composition of it. So
Right.
you do get that orchestrated choir version in the PS1, but yeah, I think it was the Advent Children movie where they really re-recorded it and upped it.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh,
Although
okay.
Advent Children was electric guitars and stuff, so
Yes, there was a bit of metal, a lot more.
maybe it was actually from Remake, because Remake is just the orchestra. Hard to tell.
And Mike, are you looking to buy Final Fantasy VII Remake at one point?
Yeah, I'll definitely play it at some point. Like you, I kind of would like to play it all in one go. I know there's some big moments in there where it does some kind of new things and stuff, and it would be kind of cool just to see that all in one go, I guess. And but at the same time, it's kind of cool being episodic and seeing the seams and seeing how much it develops. I mean, there might be a bit of a boost or a graphical boost, but then they might update episode 1 to incorporate that as well later on. So I feel like that might be the best way to play it for me anyway. Then again, if it came on Game Pass, I probably wouldn't be able to resist. So
Yeah, if it came on Game Pass, that would be brilliant.
Yep.
I don't think it will be. I think Xbox owners would be lucky to get it, but yeah, we'll see. Okay, well, let's all mute our mics and let's get into the next topic.
Best
Next award.
Visual Design. And the nominees are Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Cyberpunk 2077, Ghosts of Tsushima, Final Fantasy VII Remake,
And the winner for the best visual design, Final Fantasy VII Remake. So we're here again then, guys.
Deja vu.
It is a bit of deja vu. Best visual design. I'm going to come straight out and say I voted for F1 2020 on this. I thought the game looked fantastic. But we are here to talk and say congratulations to Square Enix. Who wants to take this one? Who voted for this? Yeah. Ironically, none of us.
I figured Luke definitely did.
I think we've said, yeah, we've said we've said a lot of wonderful things about this. But Luke, considering all of the wonderful things that you've said about Final Fantasy VII Remake, you voted for Cyberpunk. So, what do you think is lacking? I guess what could have got your vote? I guess over Cyberpunk.
I think the reason that I picked Cyberpunk was the same reason that I picked Cyberpunk for storytelling, and it's probably just the familiarity. Like, it looks incredible. To say the same about the soundtrack, it looks exactly how I see Midgar in my head. Slums look how they should, but it's that familiarity. I already know these areas. I know what it should look like. I know what to expect, which is probably why I picked Cyberpunk. But the fact that it is exactly how I think it should be speaks for itself. That shows that this is the perfect design. Characters, we know these characters inside out by now, and just the little things made it really great. Like actually seeing the correct coloured materia attached to your equipment, and to see that in cutscenes, and to see it strapped to the back of the Buster Sword. I think stuff like that really took it that higher level. I don't think that needed to be done, but just seeing they've actually taken that time and care into the characters as well as the areas, I think that really made it great.
Yeah. And Sandy, when it comes to Cyberpunk, do you think that Cyberpunk's had a slight disadvantage of coming out so late? Do you think that maybe you would have voted for it, or more people would have voted for it if it had come out a bit later?
That's a tough question. I think Cyberpunk has a beautiful design. I think it may have been in for best visual design of 2021 had they just pushed it back to February. And yeah, I'm not sure. I do think Final Fantasy probably deserves it in the end, but I think that there were a couple of rough edges in there that put me off voting for it. Characters, super high fidelity, environments. There was that occasional, like, watercolor door in the environment that was kind of like, bit weird, but probably deserved for sure.
Yeah, and Sandy, I think you've played F1 2020 as well, right? Just to back me up on this.
I haven't, but I have consumed media which features F1 21.
Yeah, I think personally, I thought that the designs in that were great, but I can really appreciate the visual design. In fact, actually, I think it is the visual design for Final Fantasy VII Remake that actually makes me want to get involved with that. When I look at everything that kind of what Luke was talking about, what you've talked about, and what I've seen of it, it definitely draws me in a lot more. It makes me want to do it. It does feel like you're playing Advent Children, I guess. And I don't know. I personally find it really fantastic. Mike, is there anything you want to add in terms of the visual design for Final Fantasy VII Remake? Is that because just to scroll back through here, by the way, everybody, Final Fantasy VII Remake is now won Best Storytelling, Best Audio, and now Best Visual Design. Mike, I know we've gone through this already, but of those three things, audio, storytelling, and visual design, if you had to pick one, which of those one things would bring you back?
I'd have to go visual design, I think, because that's usually what draws me in. You know, it's the initial thing. I played the demo of the remake and that was one of the things that took me back about it, which was like Luke was saying, it looks like your memory thinks it is, but then when you actually A/B it and compare them to each other, it's amazing how many of the blanks and the gaps that they've filled in. It's incredible how they've done it.
Yeah. There's actually, I know it sounds ridiculous to say, but when you say that's how your mind thinks how it was, when I go back to playing something like Ocarina of Time in 64, and then I go back to playing the 3DS version, you don't realize how improved the 3DS version is over the 64. It looks so much better. So, yeah, it's funny how your mind plays tricks on you. I have to admit, though, I'm not quite sure I'd get my mind tricked too much between the PlayStation 1 version and the PS4 version. But no, I know what you mean. It's how you always wanted it to look. And I think it's very, very, very deserving for best visual design. Okay, then. Our next category is actually voted by you, the viewers. We ran a Twitter poll earlier in December. I say earlier in December. We're filming this in January. But in December, we filmed a Twitter poll. And here is the next category.
The Cubed 3 Game of the Year 2020.
And there we see the winner for the Player's Choice Award is Animal Crossing New Horizons. Now, Player's Choice, thank you very much. Just to let everybody know, I'm just going to bring up the results. I haven't actually prepared these beforehand, which I probably should have done. But guys, I think it's well without saying, you know, how many has Animal Crossing sold now? Probably in the region of 30 million. Sandy, do you know a lot of people playing Animal Crossing?
Yeah, I mean, even my brother and sister bought Switches to play Animal Crossing, which is pretty much unheard of. I think 2020 gave people a lot of reasons to pick up a Switch in Animal Crossing.
And Luke, what about you? Do you have a lot of people just logging on to their Switches and you constantly see them playing Animal Crossing still?
Well, I know two people that are, but what I would say is I know people who have never played a game before, who have asked me, you know, when I get a Switch, then Animal Crossing it should be what I should be getting, isn't it? That is what everyone's playing at the moment, which I've never heard before. Like I always thought, as well as Animal Crossing sells, it's always been quite a niche thing. But yeah, it's taken the world by storm, and I think the situation has certainly been helpful for that.
Yeah.
But it's thoroughly deserving, I think.
And Mike, before Animal Crossing came out, did you think it was going to be the runaway success that it is?
Yeah, it was going to be, wasn't it? I mean, it was huge on the 3DS. The install base for the Switch, I don't know how much bigger it is, but it's you know, it's quite a bit bigger than that of the 3DS.
I think the 3DS has probably sold about 18 million. I think Switch is probably close to about 65
Oh, is it?
Probably at this point. So yeah.
All right, well, forget what I said.
I think no,
but the engagement is there with Switch at the moment as well, and you know, I think since the GameCube, even though every increment Animal Crossing's got better, but I've always seen that there's been like a mass appeal thing there from the start, just because it's just got that kind of Sims life-esque thing. It's got cute animals that, you know, and it's just a feel-good game.
Yeah, it's very interesting because obviously a lot of people were clamoring for Animal Crossing to be on the Wii U, and instead we've got the Amiibo Festival thing, and then we've got the Happy Home Designer game. Well, I think that was on 3DS, and then we had Pocket Camp, and people were getting probably overly frustrated. I could just imagine, Sandy, if this was released on the Wii U, do you think it would have helped Wii U sales? Or do you think it's because of the Switch's portability that has helped it?
Oh, I mean, I think it could have had the potential to maybe not rescue the Wii U, but certainly to have helped it last a bit longer, maybe an extra year or something. But I do think it is also aided by the Switch's portability. I think people look at it and go, well, this is my holiday game now. I'm going to take this with me everywhere. It's still not the most friendly game to dive on for 5 minutes on the train or whatever, but I guess some people will use it that way.
Yeah. Now, just to let everybody know, so the Twitter poll which we ran, Last of Us Part 2 got 9.4% of the vote. Final Fantasy VII Remake got 21.9%. That was tied with Hades, which also got 21.9%. And Animal Crossing New Horizons got 46.9% of the vote. So, player's choice indeed. I think that was just a fairly fair representation of what people would want to see. Okay, well then let's dive into our next category. Let's take it away.
Best PlayStation 4 game. And the nominees are Final Fantasy VII Remake, The Last of Us Part 2, Persona 5 Royal.
And the best PlayStation 4 game goes to Final Fantasy VII Remake. We're back here again, guys. And congratulations once again to Square Enix. Phenomenal, right? So just to recap, that is now the winner of the best storytelling, best audio, best visual design, and now the best PlayStation 4 game of 2020. Luke, in terms of PlayStation 4 offerings, and I'm asking you because I know you're very tied to this game. You voted for it as well, best PlayStation 4 game. But of the PlayStation 4 games that you played, yeah, of all the PlayStation 4 games that you've played this year, or 2020, I should say, what made you vote for Final Fantasy VII over them?
I think just the whole scope and the scale of it. Like Sandy said earlier, it's a game that still sticks in my mind very clearly. There was so much in it that kept you going back to it and just leaves that long-lasting impression. Not to mention the wait. It's been so long waiting for this game to come out and hoping it would be everything you hoped it would. And I think they've got a lot to be proud of. I think it did maybe 99% of what everyone hoped. I've played a lot of different games, but this is the one that you'd put maybe above. I'd say this and Death Stranding, I'd say, were experiences rather than games. The long-lasting memories kind of thing.
Wow. And Sandy, Final Fantasy fan that maybe you are, you didn't vote for this. And do you think that in a different year, that Persona 5 Royal might have taken the crown here?
Probably. I think if Royal had been the 2019 version of Persona 5, it would probably have blasted that year out of the water, with maybe Resident Evil 2 being a close second. But I mean, Final Fantasy 7 totally deserves it. I only really voted Persona because it didn't have any technical hitches at all. I found that Final Fantasy 7 had a couple of tiny little rough bits that just maybe zapped you out of the experience very briefly. But it's the game that I still go, yeah, I want a shot of Final Fantasy 7 Remake. Because Persona is maybe a bit harder to jump back into, being the 200-hour experience that it is.
Yeah. And Mike, do you sort of agree with the others there? In terms of this being, a PlayStation 4 experience to remember. I'm just trying to look at what you voted here. You voted actually same as me with this. We both voted for Dreams.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Now, Sandy has spoke very highly of Persona 5 Royale. Probably could have got Game of the Year in a different year. PlayStation 4 Game of the Year in a different year. I think Dreams equally probably could have as well. Is there any particular sort of reason as to why you voted Dreams? Are you a creator or are you a player?
Definitely, I love a creative game. like something we haven't mentioned about Animal Crossing. That's one of the big appeals of Animal Crossing as well, is it makes creating very, very accessible, I guess, and easy. Whereas Dreams is probably the other end of the scale, and probably part of the reason it hasn't had the same kind of attachment rate with people, or whatever, it hasn't caught on as well, is because it's very dense. Like, the creation tools in it are insanely powerful and clever, but they're really hard to get into, you know what I mean? But when I was playing it earlier in the year, it reminded me of like the early days of like YouTube or Newgrounds and stuff like that. There's just loads of cool ideas and interesting things going on. It's like really inspiring to do it, and the game's pretty good. It's like the platforming mechanics and stuff like that. Everything's solid in it. You know what I mean? I think it just got kind of lost in the hubbub of stuff like Final Fantasy, and obviously it was a long time in development too. So I don't know. It just I feel like it hasn't been given its dues.
I guess the other thing is that maybe Dreams has the opposite problem of what Cyberpunk had, in the sense that it might have released too early in the year to perhaps benefit. I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. In terms of Dreams' complexity when it comes to developing levels and stages, I really applaud people who do that. That's for sure. Because you take a simple game like Super Mario Maker, for example, Maker 2. It's really easy to create a level of that, and I still can't be bothered. So, I create 1 or 2 levels, but in Dreams, I can't even fathom of how to really kind of create something, especially when I see everybody else's designs. It boggles my mind how they even have the time and ability to be able to do that. So yeah, Dreams for me is sort of close second there when it comes to PlayStation 4 games, but I think you and I were alone in that, Mike. I guess the other thing that we need to talk about, and I'll open this up to everybody, is The Last of Us Part 2. Is this something that deserved to win this category? Sandy, are you a Last of Us fan?
I am, and I think that it could have won. I feel like there's such meticulous, intricate detail in Last of Us Part 2 that is just maybe even absent from even Final Fantasy VII Remake. All these little just character moments and like really emotional connections to everything. The way the story flows at the start is also slow and meticulous and planned. But for me, the only reason I didn't vote for it is it kind of fell apart in the final quarter, as though they sort of went, oh, we've got to get to the ending quick. And suddenly things in the narrative started jumping and leaving gaps. I feel like if it hadn't quite done that, I would have probably voted for it without question. Its visuals are just sublime, and the sort of gameplay is incredibly fun and smooth. It took basically Uncharted 4 and made it into Uncharted 4 horror with even more cool physics things, which was pretty rad.
It's a shame to hear, though, that the story kind of doesn't fall away necessarily, but it seems a bit rushed. It makes me feel like Gears 5. I feel like Gears 5 had the same issue where it just abruptly ends, and to be honest, not even on a real boss as such. It wasn't really a difficult boss, and I know that took away my experience from Gears 5 particularly. So it's a shame to hear that The Last of Us 2 sort of has that, but I guess with both of those games, there's likely to be sequels. And we'll probably get an ending to those stories in some way, some form. Okay, then, guys, let's move on to our next category. Let's dive right into it.
Best PC game. And the nominees are Microsoft Flight Simulator, Hades, Doom Eternal,
and the winner for the best PC game goes to Doom Eternal. So, Doom Eternal, great first-person shooter from id Software and Bethesda. Panic Button doing the Nintendo Switch port as well. this is a game that deserves a lot of praise. It came out around the same time as Animal Crossing, I think maybe even the same week, same day. Two very different games indeed. Luke, have you played Doom Eternal? Is it something that you aspire to play?
I have. I've had a quick bash on it, and I haven't got too much to say. But what I would say is, it's what I want. It's how I expected Doom to progress in terms of gameplay, in terms of graphics. Can't beat a bit of Doom, can you? Just start blasting things.
Yeah.
But I don't think any game probably does that better.
Yeah. And Mike, have you played Doom Eternal?
Not yet, no. I downloaded it on Game Pass the other day, and then sadly, Cyberpunk's release date rolled by, and then I had to make room on my hard drive again. So I was just like, I'll do Cyberpunk first, and then I'll come back to Doom. But I did play the original sort of reboot, remake in. I always forget the years for these things. But what was it, 2016 or 17?
Yeah.
And I loved that game. I thought it was brilliantly structured. You know, I loved all the straight to the point stuff. You know, like the shoving the monitor out of the way and just picking up a gun and blasting hell aliens or whatever they are. I don't know. So yeah, probably that's another reason why I haven't played it, because I've kind of been thinking maybe it's more of the same, but more of the same is nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Now, a game that was also in that video package was Microsoft Flight Simulator. That is a game that you voted for, and is also coming to Xbox Series X and S this year. What makes Flight Simulator so appealing, and should people be on the lookout for it this year?
Definitely, I think definitely give it a go. It's an experience like nothing else. It's a strange one to recommend because it's quite boring. But I mean that in the best possible way. Like it's good boring. You kind of can just switch it on, you know, take off, fly a jetliner, and just switch off your mind. And there's something weirdly therapeutic about it. And the tech behind it all is really impressive. You can just go anywhere in the world. You know what I mean? That's cool.
Yeah. And Sandy, Microsoft Flight Simulator might not be your thing, but Doom Eternal certainly is, as you voted for it. So explain to our viewers how you loved to raise hell in on Doom Eternal.
So I picked up Doom Eternal based on a good experience with the reboot in whichever year it was, 2016, and was just blown away by the fact that their design has gone from really simple and sleek, just shoot the demons and continue, to essentially the Devil May Cry of shooting games. It's all about keeping your sort of character moving, getting those combos, taking down enemies fast, taking them down in a specific way. So you've got all your kind of like shoot them with the flamethrower for armor, punch them for your ammunition, chainsaw them for like all that kind of various stuff going on. You have to keep it in the back of your head during every battle and strategize. Yeah. They just upped the scale as well so massively. Essentially, you're just everywhere. Each level takes place on a different part of Earth or another planet or in hell. And I don't know, the entire design is just, again, so stuffed with things to do that, I don't know, it's more Doom than anyone could ever need. And I think it's enough Doom to satisfy every fan. I did find it weird that it focused so much more on story this time. It wasn't push the monitor out of the way and continue anyway. It was, here's this cutscene about why the Doomslayer is the Doomslayer. And that was a little bit odd, but it was very good. And there's so much lore that you can dive into as well that you can literally play Doom Eternal for 2020, 2021, and 2022 and still not see everything, I think.
Yeah. Interestingly about Doom Eternal, it kind of sort of reminds me at points of Metroid Prime. Yeah. Double jump, the sort of first person, the lore exploring, Obviously, the action probably not so much, but everything else around it, the atmosphere, the music, the sort of tension. There's a lot of stuff in there that sort of reminds me of Prime. But you're right, that gameplay loop of sort of chainsawing for ammo, blood punching for or glory killing for health, and having to go around in circles, having to keep doing that because ammo is quite limited, health is quite limited, armor is quite limited, and as you go through, you do stock up and you do level up, but the enemies get harder as well. So you could take 1 or 2 hits, and all of a sudden you're low on ammo or you're low on health even, and you're having to go straight to the action. You can't retreat. It's not a game where you could really retreat. So I think that in the mind of a lot of first-person shooter fans, something like Call of Duty, for example, you tend to hide away, or even Gears of War, where you take cover, you let your health naturally recover. Fortnite probably also does that. Whereas Doom Eternal, you have to run forward, you have to press on to advance, and that type of pressure, I think, definitely owes it very well. All right, well, congratulations to id Software and Bethesda for the winner there of Best PC Game. But now we're going to move on to our next category.
Best Xbox
Take it
One
away.
game. And the nominees are Doom Eternal, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, Ori and the Will of the Wisps,
And the winner for the best Xbox One game goes to Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Well, congratulations to Ori. Well, congratulations to Microsoft Game Studios. What a fantastic game Ori and the Will of the Wisps is. Mike, is this a game for you that you think is deserving of best Xbox One game?
100%, yeah. Ori is one of those games which I didn't play the Blind Forest originally. And I could have quite easily not played Will of the Wisps too. And it was only sort of again, it's another Game Pass thing. It was on there, and I thought, there's a lot of buzz, a lot of people talking about Ori, and I thought it looked great, but I was kind of like, I wasn't quite prepared for how good it actually is. It's a fantastic game across the board on every metric that you could measure it by.
Yeah. And Sandy, I mean, are you in agreement there? Is Game Pass perhaps introducing people to games that they thought they might not have otherwise played? I mean, would you have purchased Ori?
Well, actually, I was in totally the same boat. It was through Game Pass that I actually discovered Ori existed. So I wouldn't actually have picked it up beforehand. But yeah, discovering that kind of exploratory Metroidvania with cute animals and scary death was very interesting and very Game Pass.
And but to both of you, I guess, is that now hyped you up for a sequel? Because I know, Mike, you said that you didn't play the original, The Blind Forest. Now you've played through Will of the Wisps. Are you going to go back to Blind Forest? Are you gonna wait? You're anticipating now?
I have considered going back to play Blind Forest, which is probably as soon as if I ever clear off a backlog, or maybe I'll just add it to my backlog, perhaps. I don't know. Ori and the Moon Studio are completely on my radar now. So whatever they do next, I'm going to be watching with interest.
Yeah. And Sandy, in terms of Game Pass, obviously being the accessor to that, is there a sort of a reluctance to cancel your Game Pass now, knowing that you could lose out on great games like this and you haven't got it in your collection?
I don't know if it adds a reluctance to cancel as such, but it certainly makes it something that I will return to after this current period runs out. So maybe down the line there'll be some sort of showcase at one of the big events. Oh, here's a load of cool stuff that's coming. Maybe at those points I'll dive back into Game Pass and have a look through their list again.
And Luke, not an Ori fan?
Wasn't. But Yeah, I finished it literally yesterday, and I can't remember what I voted for, but it was definitely wrong because Ori was fantastic, and really to care on such an emotional level about 2D drawn platforming sprites. I think that's a credit to Moon Studios to make it as well as they did.
Yeah. Now, just to remind you, you're the only person not to vote for Ori. Ori was actually the only category with a clean sweep other than what you voted for, which was Spiritfarer.
Oh yeah,
Now, can you say
I can't
some
remember.
nice things about Spiritfarer?
Yeah, it's a great game. It's Animal Crossing if everybody on the island died every hour.
Nice.
Permadeath Animal Crossing.
Yeah, yeah. But again, the reasons that I like Spiritfarer, a lot of those same kind of feelings and emotional beats hit in Ori as well. But yeah, I probably would have said Ori. But I'm glad I didn't say something ridiculous. I stand by Spiritfarer as a great game, but Ori is deserving.
Ori definitely. It's up there for me as well. Okay then. Well, let's move on to our next category. Let's take it away.
Best Nintendo Switch game. And the nominees are Mario Kart Live Home Circuit, Super Mario 3D All Stars, Animal Crossing New Horizons,
And the best Nintendo Switch game for 2020 goes to Animal Crossing New Horizons. That's a triple winner for Animal Crossing. That's best multiplayer, that's player's choice, and that is now a Nintendo Switch game of the year. Now, we said pretty much everything we could say about Animal Crossing, but just to quickly go over some of those other nominees there. Super Mario 3D All Stars, Luke, a game that you reviewed, a game that you probably thoroughly enjoyed. Between the two, Animal Crossing and Super Mario, obviously very different experiences, but if you could only recommend one, which one would you recommend?
I'd recommend Mario if you are new to the Mario series because you've got three of the best titles there. But Animal Crossing for that jump in and for something new as well, I think is why it deserved Game of the Year for Nintendo Switch. I think it's only because I've already played those Mario games to death
Yeah.
that I was looking for something new, and I don't even think I've seen advertising from Nintendo on TV that doesn't use Animal Crossing. I think that is at the forefront of everything, and rightly so as well.
It's very true. And Mike, of the nominees that we just saw in that video package there, is there a game in there that you know would come first place for you? Because you voted Animal
Yep.
Crossing. So what's your
Yeah.
second of those
Like,
games that you
what
just
more
saw
can
in
we
that
say
video
about
package?
Animal Crossing? I mean, the one which can you remind me of the nominees?
So we had Mario Kart Live Home Circuit, we had Super Mario 3D All Stars, and I believe Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity was
Cool.
also.
So it's the Nintendo clean sweep for Switch.
Yeah, that's very true.
I was going to say the one that standed out was I haven't played it, but Mario Kart Live Circuit is just I'm still blown away with that as an idea, and it's kind of cool that it should get nominated because if you were going to judge it on originality, that would have definitely had it. And then obviously, like, to repeat what Luke said, I mean the three Mario games are all-time classics, masterclasses in game design. And I haven't played Hyrule Warriors yet, but I will get around to it at some point. I'd imagine it's a bit more of an acquired taste, Hyrule Warriors, though, because it's that what do we call it? Misu
Muso.
yeah, genre. Misu, Misu.
Muso. I think miso is water.
I could do with some water now.
Yeah, no, it is very different, but it's still quite a bit of a Zelda game, more than the original Hyrule Warriors. And Sandy, in terms of, we've seen a Mario Kart albeit a bit of a spin-off. We've seen a Mario 3D Collection, even though it's a compilation game, and we've seen a Zelda game, even though it's a spin-off, and they've all been beaten out by Animal Crossing. Is that a testament to how strong Animal Crossing is?
I think so. I mean, it's definitely the second strongest Animal Crossing entry. I think New Leaf would still rank slightly higher than it. But certainly for a Switch experience, it's very hard to say that that isn't one of, if not the best Switch experience you can have. I am very interested in picking up Hyrule Warriors, though, especially if it's more of a Zelda game than the first game in that kind of Warriors spin-off series. So I don't know. We'll see. Reevaluate that later.
If you haven't picked up Hyrule Warriors, it is on the eShop as a demo, I believe. So definitely go and try that out. And Mario Kart Live Home Circuit, I think, is one of those games that you need a sizable living space to be able to play it. But you can turn your living room or your bedroom into a circuit, and it is quite simple to do. Definitely go and check out our YouTube video on that as well, because it shows you how I've transformed my bedroom into a circuit. Okay then, well, that was the best Nintendo Switch game of 2020, and congratulations to Animal Crossing New Horizons. But now let's move to our next category.
Best indie game. And the nominees are Fall Guys, Hades, Streets of Rage 4,
and the best indie game goes to Hades. Congratulations to Hades. What a fantastic game. An indie experience that kind of really came in towards the end of the year and stole the show. I think it was first shown in an Indie World Direct. I could be wrong. I believe it is multi-platform. That's not just Switch exclusive. But Luke, Hades, is that a game that's caught your interest?
It has. I haven't played it yet, but like you said, the hype for this game has been massive, and it came in late in the year, and everybody's talking about it. And how often do you hear everybody talking about a dungeon crawler, roguelike type game? So I think there's something special there. There must be.
Yeah. Now, one of the other nominees is something that you and Mike were both very happy for, and that was Fall Guys. Another game, again, taking the world by storm. You've obviously both been really into Fall Guys, and you haven't picked up Hades. Now, is that, if I was to tell you at the start of the year that you were going to play this battle royale, jelly bean type of game over a dungeon crawler roguelite, would you believe me?
No, but if you'd said Takeshi's Castle the game, I would have been all in.
That's very true. Sandy, there's been a huge number of indie games this year. We've obviously had Hades, we've had Fall Guys, we also had Streets of Rage 4 that was in that list there as well. Is there of those three games? I think a notable mention, by the way, is Among Us. A lot of people have obviously been talking about Among Us, but is there anything there that tickles your pickle of those four games?
I mean, I've got my hands on Streets of Rage 4, and it's phenomenal. It's probably my pick out of this. I'm not even sure I actually voted for one. I feel like I pulled up a blank when I was doing the voting for this. But I think Streets of Rage 4 definitely pips my winning place. But a close second, and one that I totally forgot existed, was Eastern Exorcist, which was a side-scrolling action game by a Chinese developer that was very much in the vein of like Vanillaware's Muramasa Demon Blade from the Wii, and it's just excellent. I completely forgot it existed until right there when we were talking about it.
I have to admit that Sandy has completely spoken another language to me there. I don't know what he said over the last 30 seconds. There are some games there that I'm not fully aware of. But so this game? Name it again. Sorry.
Eastern Exorcist.
Eastern Exorcist. Is that what you're saying? Sorry, I wasn't quite sure. I don't
That's
know.
okay.
Maybe my sleepiness is catching up with me. But no. Well, fantastic bunch of indie games out there. And again, Hades. Do you have any closing comments for Hades, Sandy? In terms of the way it looks, of its play style, is this a game that you could get yourself into?
So I haven't actually seen gameplay of it, which surprises me. But from what I've seen of like the artwork and the sort of designs, it looks fantastic.
Very hack and slash sort of say Diablo-esque, but I don't know if that's probably a more accurate way of saying it without saying to someone how it plays. But no, it's very, again, demon-y, as the name implies. It's not a game I've been able to get my hands on, but it was definitely one that caught my interest in the Indie World Direct, that's for sure, when I first saw it. So congratulations. Okay, well then let's move on to our penultimate category. Take it away.
Game Studio. And the nominees are Nintendo, Codemasters, id Software, Super Giant Games, Insomniac.
And the winner for the best game studio goes to Super Giant Games. Congratulations to Super Giant Games once again, 2 awards and beating out stiff competition. Nintendo, Codemasters. It's incredible that an indie studio has come in and taken this as the sort of best studio out there. Fully deserved. Mike, what do you reckon?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I haven't played Hades yet, obviously, but I've played Transistor and a bit of Bastion, and I thought both of those were very high quality games. They're clearly, there's clearly a strong studio there, and rightfully so, they've won best studio. So it all makes sense to me. Yeah.
Yeah. And Luke, massive fan of our comic book hero web slinging person, and you voted Insomniac. What do you feel about Supergiant winning this over someone like Insomniac or id Software or Square Enix or even Nintendo?
I think it's just a sign of the changing landscape when it means they've got that exposure. Just to reiterate what Mike said, I haven't played Hades yet, but I played Bastion, which I thought was a great game. But for the general gaming public to think that an indie studio like Supergiant Games would take it over someone with the resources, the advertising promotions that, Miles Morales is everywhere, I think it's a really impressive thing.
Yeah. Now, I voted for Codemasters. And again, I've sort of expressed my love here for the sort of racing games that they've released this year, F1 2020 and Dirt 5. I think both of them are probably the top of their racing games, really. And I think they were incredible to even showcase those kind of games in a year like this. I think the realism in F1 2020 was incredible. But for Supergiant Games to take this, I think is, like you said, it is a change of pace. It is something that they should be very proud of. I know we're not the only outlet to give them sort of Studio of the Year as well. So I think Supergiant Games should really, really, really proud that they fought away from all of that sort of marketing from a lot of other studios to get there. And it's on the map. I think a lot of people will probably be going through their back catalogue, such as Transistor or Bastion as well, and now picking those games up, because of the success of Hades. I think they've done a phenomenal job. And again, I think Supergiant Games should really, really proud that they fought away from all of that sort of marketing from a lot of other studios to get there. And it's on the map. I think a lot of people will probably be going through their back catalogue, such as Transistor or Bastion as well, and now picking those games up, because of Hades. it's definitely sort of caught my attention to them now as well. And I know I'd be looking very much, hopefully for a sale on Hades. I want to pick it up, but at the moment I've just got so many games to go through that I just can't even warrant it. Sandy, there was another game. There was another studio in there, but only received one vote, and that was Atlas. It was the one you voted for. Yeah, we know you're a big fan of Persona 5, and that's been persistent throughout our nominations here. Supergiant Games, is it a big win for them?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Considering that even I recognize them from their back catalogue, clearly they've made a good name for themselves. And I feel like Hades has been this labor of love that's definitely, it's getting the approval it deserves. And I feel like I don't know enough about the company to really comment on it properly, but if they achieved that through keeping their staff happy and having a good kind of development cycle and stuff like that, then absolutely 100% well done.
Well, yeah, I again, final congratulations to Supergiant Games. Best indie game in Hades and best game studio for them. But now we move on to the final category, the one that everybody is waiting for. It is the Game of the Year. Let's take it away.
Cubed3 Game of the Year 2020. Hades. The Last of Us Part 2. Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Final Fantasy VII Remake. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2.
And the winner for Game of the Year 2020 goes to Final Fantasy VII Remake. Congratulations to the team at Square Enix for winning Cubed3's Game of the Year 2020. Phenomenal showing. So just to run down the list, that is best storytelling, best audio, best visual design, the best PlayStation 4 game, and now the Game of the Year 2020. Luke, are you proud? You happy?
It's everything I dreamed it would be. I feel, personally responsible for this. I feel like I should get some credit in some way for the same as any Final Fantasy fan for holding out for this game. And yeah, just having it here and seeing that it is everything that we hoped it would be, as well as some really new, fresh ideas, which really mix it up for the future without going too heavy into spoilers. Yeah, thoroughly deserving. I'm very hoping that I did vote for this. I'm sure I did.
Let me go through. It would be quite funny if you didn't. Let's just have a quick look.
If I didn't,
do you know what? You didn't.
Did I not? What did I vote for?
You voted, and do you know what? This was only this was close to the top. But you and I both voted for a game that hasn't actually been talked about.
Oh yes.
And it's Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. We've talked about all the other nominees that are here, and just to let you know, the running order, by the way, there were, I'm just going to count this, of all of the Cube3 contributors that nominated Games of the Year, there were 25 games that were in the final running order, and the 5 that you just saw there came down to the final nominees. We had a joint third position. That was Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Hades, and Tony Hawk's 1 and 2. Last of Us came second, and Final Fantasy was a runaway winner in first place. But Luke, you and I both put in a chip for Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2.
You know,
Now,
you can't argue with Tony Hawk's, but
yeah,
Final Fantasy deserves it by far.
Yeah.
Pick up and play value.
yeah, and Sandy, are you surprised? Are you surprised that Final Fantasy VII has had such a clean sweep of awards for this? Are you happy and proud for Square Enix?
Yes, I am happy and proud, and I am not surprised. Given that, as I was saying before, it's that one game that's just in my head all the time. It's, I could play Yakuza, but I still kind of want to launch back into Final Fantasy VII Remake and give it a second try and beat the hard mode and try and platinum it, which seems like an impossible task given how hard mode is. But yeah, it's the game that's just cemented there since it came out in April. Can't shift it.
And Mike, listening to all the hype, all these awards, the game of the year, it is beaten out all of these other games. Does it make you want to sort of just jump right into it now? And if you saw it on sale for, let's say, £20, would it stop you from waiting for that definitive edition, like how I am? Or would you think, do you know what, 20 quid, I'm in?
I don't know. I don't know. It's it's looking like this award show is rigged. So
yeah, in terms of game of the year, just to let everybody know, we all of us at Cubed3 had 3 nominations, which were then sort of tiered. So we had a top game which got awarded 5 points, a second game which got awarded 3 points, and a third game which got awarded 2 points. Luke, just to save you some grace, you voted for this in second place. You voted Tony Hawk's Final Fantasy and Cyberpunk. Mike, a game that we have already talked about, and a game that probably deserves to get a lot more praise than it does, is Ori. You voted for Ori, Cyberpunk, and Animal Crossing. I think that's a fair reflection of what's won awards today, with the exception of Cyberpunk. Are you happy to see Ori even among the nominees?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ori is definitely my favourite game of the year that I've played this year. As I say, it's every level across the board. It's great. One thing I will say about Ori, which in its favour, is I can imagine it being a game where you can play it 5-10 years from now, and I think it's going to age very well, and it's still going to be good. So yeah, who knows? That you have to stand the test of time as well.
Now, a lot of criticism tends to get thrown at Microsoft for saying they don't really have many first-party exclusives, and yet when they smash one out of the park, they end up on Switch. Now, do you think that's a benefit to Ori and Microsoft Game Studios to port that, or do you think they should have perhaps kept this to increase sales of an Xbox, given how well it's been received?
I think it is a good move. It's a good strategy for Microsoft because I think it has brought a lot of attention to Ori, and there's probably a lot of Nintendo players which I'd imagine aren't looking at Xbox. But if anyone plays Ori, it turns heads. You know what I mean? So I think it will get a lot of attention over to Xbox. It certainly worked for me. Obviously, I've done it through Game Pass, but if I played it another way, I didn't realise till this generation really what Microsoft had. Because I've always ignored Microsoft a little bit, and this generation I'm starting to take note, and it's because of titles like Ori.
That's good. I mean, they've got plethora of games to explore for sure, and Ori, I think, is a standout one in their catalogue of games. Sandy, now you did vote for Final Fantasy. It came third in your Game of the Year's sort of nominations. You've already spoken about Persona quite a lot. But one game I haven't really got you to talk about too much today is the game that you voted for top, and that was Super Mario 3D All Stars Collection. Um, Looking back on it now, do you feel a bit naive?
Yeah, a little bit. I feel like maybe I could have put something a bit more deserving in that top spot. I think it's hard to ignore the prestige of the three games in 3D All Stars. But I think maybe because of the nature of that package, it should maybe have been just a nominee for one of the other categories. I mean, I was playing it the other day, so it is very good. But Game of the Year.
And I'll come back to you in just a moment, actually, because I want us to finish on Final Fantasy. But I voted for Tony Hawk's F1 2020 and Doom Eternal, games that we've talked about already. But Tony Hawk's 1 and 2, I've just got to give a special shout out there because I think that the nostalgia that that game brought back, similar to probably what Mario 3D All Stars did for some of you guys as well, I think was phenomenal. I think it hasn't had enough praise at all. I mean, we've talked about it on Glass of the Wall quite a few times. But Tony Hawk's, I think for me, was one of my most enjoyed games of 2020. And I really hope that they use the same engine to create a 3 and 4 or an Underground or whatever. I want them to bring back some of the other games in that same engine because they've developed it now. They've got it fine-tuned. It's so replayable. The music in there is intact. It looks great. And it's one of those things like how we talked about earlier. It looks like one of those games that how you reminded of it when you play it. I know, again, it's had massive graphical overhaul since its PlayStation 1 counterpart, but because the levels are almost one for one, it just sort of takes you back. And going back to the PlayStation 1 versions now might be a bit hard to do. But then let's finish on this. Everybody's final thoughts on Final Fantasy. Sandy, let's go back to you. You did vote Final Fantasy VII in your list. In terms of everything, in terms of a very short summary, what are your favorite aspects of Final Fantasy VII Remake?
Reliving the whole Midgar segment from the first game in this new ultra high fidelity, amazing soundscape, just really flashy modern package with combat that feels very considered and very styled to resemble Final Fantasy VII without being Final Fantasy VII's original combat. It makes it not just the definitive way to play Final Fantasy VII, or that opening part of Final Fantasy VII, but also probably the best Final Fantasy we've seen since Final Fantasy XII.
And Mike, in terms of other Final Fantasy games that you have played, where does 7 sit on your list in terms of even the original?
It's definitely up the top there, just behind 8 and 9. But no, joking aside, I mean, you know, like I said, it's a classic. It's a classic game.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. What more can I say?
We're waiting for Square Enix to release the Game of the Year, Cubed3 Game of the Year edition, with our little award on.
I mean, it does
Luke,
keep it relevant, doesn't it, for a new age of these remakes? You know, so that's really cool.
That is absolutely certain. I think they've probably made the right choice there. It was the game that got the most critical acclaim at the time. It's the game that probably put the game on the map, particularly in the West. And yes, while there are probably games in the series arguably that are better than Final Fantasy VII, I think it is the game that everybody recognizes. And I guess it became, because of the birth of the PlayStation and the sort of switch from Nintendo over to PlayStation, it really definitely just brought it into the mainstream. Luke, you get the final words for Final Fantasy VII Remake. Again, it's won most of our awards today: Best Audio, Best Storytelling, Best Visual Design, Best PlayStation 4 Game, and Game of the Year 2020. One final comment from you?
Game of the Year for making me care more about Avalanche than I did in '97, which I didn't think was possible.
Fair enough. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much. It's been a bit of a longer show today, and I do apologize for that. But thank you very much for watching and listening. Sandy, what is your social?
So my social media is at Squidgy Buffalo.
And Luke, what is your socials?
At Lem207.
And Mike, what is yours?
Because I can never say it, it's now down the bottom there. Movement
Oh,
_ man.
there you go. No ease.
No ease.
and I'm at Flynn Neal. And I really thank you all for watching and listening. Please let us know if you feel like another game should have won any of these awards that you've seen here today. But for now, guys, that's everything. Enjoy.
The Cubed 3 Awards 2020.